Dad, you were born January 11th, 1942. What are your earliest memories?
I think my first memories were living in a house on Murray Avenue in Shorewood, which was just north of Milwaukee, the first suburb north. It was a two-flat. My parents, my sister and I lived on the first floor. Two aunts lived on the second floor. My grandparents lived maybe 5-7 minutes away, and we had a big yard next to us that my grandfather actually owned. So we could play in that lot because it was on a hill. The house was on a hill, so you couldn't play in the front yard. We played in the side yard.
Where I grew up, we had family around, but they were miles away in Skokie and wherever else. What was it like having so much family so close?
We were always at my grandparents'. There was no other family because my father's family was from New Jersey. My grandparents really had no other family. My mother's sister, my aunt, who lived above us, was not married. So there were no other kids in the family other than my sister.
Historically speaking, in the 1950s, you were a teenager, the time of Elvis Presley. Did you get caught up in that at all, or what was your jam? What was your thing in the 1950s as a teenager, in which teenagers rebel?
I don't think we actually rebelled. I liked folk music. I didn't like Elvis Presley. I didn't like the hard rock. I liked folk music, soft, almost protest type songs. I have to remember though, every summer from 1949, either 1949 or 1950, through 1959, I spent away at summer camp. I was never home during the summer, and when I was home, we was always at school.
Back in that time in the 50s, there were a lot of parents that looked at Elvis Presley as a danger because he shook his hips and he was very sexual at the time. Did you look at those people who looked at Elvis Presley that way as, you're old, get over it, or hey, it's kind of cool, it's kind of hip?
No, not at all. I didn't even think of it that way.
Not at all?
Not at all. I wasn't a big Elvis Presley fan. So it was there, but I never looked at it that way. Just like I never really looked at the Beatles.
In the 1960s?
Right.
When you got married in 1963. You were always a folk music guy.
Yes, always folk music. Protest songs.
Teenagers rebel. They do things that maybe their parents wouldn't approve of. When you were a teenager in the 1950s and a little bit in the 1960s, what kind of things did you do that your parents might have said, ooh, David, I wish you wouldn't have done that?
I really don't recall, because I went to college in 1960, and whatever went on there, and the drug craze and the smoking hadn't started when I was in college. It started in 65, I graduated in 64. Yes, there was drinking. Being from Wisconsin, being from Milwaukee, there was a lot of beer drinking there.
This is going to sound like a crazy question. It's not meant to be that way. If you could turn back the clock 5 years with the drug craze, would you have wanted to have been a part of that? I'm not saying you're a druggie, but for all the pot that they smoked, after you graduated, do you think you would have enjoyed potentially that lifestyle for a little bit?
No, because I never liked to smoke. I never smoked in my life. And I tried a couple times, but I couldn't even inhale it because I didn't smoke. So I never really concerned myself with that.
So
drinking was something else, but that's beside the point.
Okay, so give me a good drinking story, maybe from your fraternity days.
We used to play keg baseball. Keg baseball was a fraternity and a sorority got together to play against another fraternity and sorority. And you would take a keg of beer and put it on first. And you would take a keg of beer and put it on third. The first person got up, got a hit, and wherever the ball was hit, it was a hit. You would go to first and you had to chug a 16-ounce glass cup of beer. Next person got up, would get a hit, you would go to second. Even if you go to third, no, you only went to second. They'd bring you out a glass. This continued through all of the fraternity guys and all of the sorority guys for the top of the first inning. Then the second inning, then the other team would come up. The game never lasted more than one inning. And it was just fun. And I went to school where they had 3-2 beer and they had state-controlled liquor.
What does 3-2 beer mean for those that don't
Alcohol
understand?
content of the beer. Most beer is 5 or 6%. This was 3.2. Coming from Milwaukee, which at that time was the beer capital of the country, it was like cutting it in half.
Were you a casual beer drinker, or David likes his beer?
I could drink pretty well.
Were you a chugger, or you just like to enjoy it?
Both.
How quickly did the glass of beer disappear in your hand?
A 16-ounce, you have to understand, when you chug a beer, you don't drink it. You just open your mouth and pour it down. So I could probably pour one down in less than 5 seconds, but you're not drinking it, you're not tasting it, you're just pouring it down.
Let's take a couple of steps back. Grandpa Joel traveled a lot, probably 4 days a week, maybe 5 days a week,
Right.
whatever it was. How difficult was it on you not having your father around, but how wonderful was it being able to spend that time with Grandma Mim?
You know, I never really thought of it that way. He was working. That was his job. He had to travel. So him traveling, my mother was there. She took care of everything. And when he got home, he had tickets to the Milwaukee Braves. This is when the Milwaukee had the Braves. So we almost go to baseball games every weekend. We didn't do a lot of things together. The couple things that we used to do, I mean, I consider myself fairly handy, and I always watch my father work. When I say, "Can I help you do it?" and he said, "No, here, I'll show you how." I learned an awful lot from him as far as fixing things and electrical things like that. That I learned from him, to be very handy, also to be very organized. He was always very organized. In his office, everything was in order, and I think that rubbed off on me because I think I'm a very organized person.
So you got that from Grandpa Joel.
Right.
What traits do you have from Grandma Mim?
I'm not sure. I'm just not sure. She was always there. There was always home. She was a homemaker, although she did participate in PTA. She was very active in our temple. I think she showed me that you have to get involved in things, and I do now. I get involved whenever I'm part of an organization. I tend to get involved in it, and I think that's one of the things she taught me, that you have to sort of give back.
How much do you attribute, when I asked you the question, what traits do you have from Grandma Mim? How much does your answer have to do with the way she was raised? I'm guessing there wasn't a lot of hugs and affection in her house when she was growing up.
My grandparents on my mother's side, they were both German. He served in the German army in World War I. So he came over here with a very strict attitude. Basically, children should be seen and not heard. Now, he did that with my mother and her sister. He did not do that with me or my sister. We go over there almost every Sunday. They have Sunday dinner there to visit my grandmother, who was not well the whole time I knew her. And my sister and I could run around, make noise, do anything, and he would yell at us. If my mother or my aunt did something wrong, he would yell. And that's sort of
Did that make you feel special?
I don't know if it made me feel special. Just kids getting away with doing things.
Aunt Lynn and you are very close right now. Has that built to a crescendo over the years, or was it always like that?
It took time to build. I tease her. I mean, the favorite joke was when my mother would serve cupcakes for dinner, she'd put the plate down, I'd go like this across the top of a cupcake and say, that's mine. I probably took one that Lynn really wanted. There was a period in my life where I did not have a lot of contact with her, but since my divorce and being with Sherry, I've become very, very close with her. And then when Sherry passed away, and then when her husband passed away, we become very, very close. I spend every New Year's with her, and I spend three weeks in Chautauqua with her, and we talk every Sunday, which we never did before.
If you could go back in time and be 10-year-old David Goodman with your sister, who is what, 2-3 years younger than you?
2 years younger.
What would you do
3 years.
What would you do differently?
Probably nothing, because I probably wouldn't know what to do anything different.
Not at all.
Okay, I wouldn't do it on every cupcake.
Okay, so you get to college and you're playing beer baseball and you're having the time of your life, I'm guessing. How did you meet Mom?
It's funny, I saw her on campus, and at Drake it wasn't a very large Jewish community. And I asked a couple of my friends, who was she? I said, maybe I'll ask her out. And they said, she probably won't go out with you. Why? Because you can drink an awful lot, and that she doesn't like. I said, okay, I'll worry about that. I did ask her out. We dated our junior, end of our junior year, and then our senior year in college, and we got engaged just before we graduated.
How'd you ask her?
I asked her at a restaurant. No, I did not get down on my knee, and I didn't have a ring.
You didn't have a ring?
No.
Did she say, where's the ring?
No, I told her, my father has a jeweler in Milwaukee, and we were going, it was coming the holidays, and we're gonna go to Milwaukee first to see my parents. We'll get the ring there, and then we're gonna go down to her parents.
Was it a quick yes? You knew she was gonna say yes for sure?
Pretty much. She was dating somebody else a bit at the same time.
At the same time? That takes a lot of chutzpah. She's
yeah.
dating two guys at the same
Well,
time,
no,
and you're jumping the shark?
She had another friend that she liked, but he was basically an Orthodox Jew, and she could not see herself being in that situation. The other thing too is we had one very strong common interest that luckily I have a degree in marketing and economics, and I also have a degree in playing bridge. In my senior year, I was playing tournament bridge 5 days a week, and she was with me because we loved the game and played an awful lot of bridge together.
So, what was the journey that the two of you took together after you got married? How did that journey begin? Whether it was buying a house where you were living, having children?
I had a job before I ever went to college. My father worked for a company that was the national distributor for Christian Brothers Wine and Brandy. 80% of that stock was owned by the owners of the company he went to work for. No, 80% of the stock that my father went to work for was owned by Sam Brofman. People don't know, that was Seagram's. My mother's father was a vice president of Seagram's. I was raised in that business, and I was offered a job in their marketing department. Before I ever went to college, all I had to do was graduate degree, and I was going to go to San Francisco and work there. Matter of fact, the summer between my sophomore and junior year, I worked in the wineries in California learning the wine business. A week or so before our graduation, my future father-in-law came to me and said his son and him, they had a drapery manufacturing company, and they wanted to know if I was interested in coming into the business, not going to California. I thought about it. I thought the opportunity could be really good going into a family business. This was 1964. And probably make it a little easier not having to go to California and start a whole life over again. So that's what I did. I started working for him.
Was there ever a point when you make a decision, things unfold from there? So you may not have had Lisa or me. You may not have met Sherry. There's a progression of things. If you would have moved to California, you never would have met Sherry. There wouldn't have been a snapshot in time where I'm sitting here or Lisa is in Minneapolis. Did you ever think, I don't want to use the word regret, but did you ever regret, I wish I would have done this thing in San Francisco?
I think about it from time to time when there was difficulties going on, but I still like the idea of staying in Chicago, develop friends and it would have been a big thing to go out there. I mean, West Coast was great, and I love San Francisco, hated Los Angeles, love the area there, but no, I don't have any regrets not going down there.
Did you enjoy working at Urkoff Manufacturing, and how did you begin there?
Graduated college, went in the first day and started sweeping the floors in the factory. My father-in-law wanted me to learn the business from the bottom up. And I started in the back learning it, and then one day he called me in and he called the shop foreman in and he says, I want David to learn now what we make, how we make draperies. And I turned to the foreman, I said, fine, I want you to teach me how to work every sewing machine in the factory. And this was a 100-row factory, it was not a small factory. He said, why do you want to learn the sewing machines? And I said, because I don't want a seamstress when I go to her and say, this isn't right, telling me, sit down and show me how to do it. That I think I got from my father, that if I'm going to do something, I want to know how to do it. So I learned that whole business, and about 3 years into the business, I talked my father-in-law and brother-in-law into buying an IBM 402 accounting machine. Now this was at the beginning of equipment. People, if you're remember it, it was these big machines, card sorters, punch cards, and everything like that. And I remember one really funny incident because this was IBM. Back in the 60s and 70s, IBM were three-piece suits, rep ties, and wingtip shoes. And the equipment that we had to be programmed by hand. You would plug cords into boards, and I would go into the IBM building downtown, dressed in jeans and tennis shoes, and people would look at me and go, I said, yeah, but I'm the client. And I thought that was really fun. Did that, and then I found out that Sears Roebuck was a big client of ours, very big client. But they were looking for people to do commercial work. In other words, we were doing residential. They were looking for trying to get into the commercial industry, doing schools, office buildings. And at that time it was draperies, that's all it was. And they wanted to know if we wanted to get involved with them. And I told my father-in-law, I think this is the future, I want to get involved. And he says, go ahead and do it. So I developed in the company a commercial division. And I developed that, and then for probably 30 years, that's what I did. I ran that commercial division, and we were doing big projects all over the country.
You started Urkoff Manufacturing what year? I know you were married in '63. You started
No,
when? You were married in '63.
No, 64.
You were married in '64.
Right.
When did you start at Urkoff?
Middle of June '64, right after, 2 days after we graduated. I don't remember the exact day we graduated in June though.
I don't know if anyone, really at any age, is ready to be a father. A year and a half later, Lisa was born. Did you feel at 24 you were ready to be a father?
Probably not, but that's how it was at that time. Especially, I'm sorry, in the Jewish community. You were expected to go to college, get a degree, come home, get married, start a family. That's just how it was. And I'm not trying to be you know, I don't know how other religion, that's just how it was in the Jewish religion at that time. That's what it was. Were we probably ready to parents? Probably not. But all of our friends had kids, or were having kids. That's just how it was back then. I don't think it was the right thing to do at that time. I think now, you know, people are getting married in their 30s and not having kids till they're 35. I think that is a lot more reasonable than it was back in the 60s.
You brought up being Jewish. You were raised Reformed, is that correct?
Correct.
How did you convert to being conservative?
I didn't convert. What I found out was all of my friends who were Reformed, when we talked, they became non-practicing Jews. And I said to myself, okay, I'm Jewish. If I'm not going to practice the religion, what's going to happen to the Jewish religion? And I started going to, and when I went to temple in Des Moines, where Drake was, basically for the holidays. No, I didn't go to services, but I started going to the conservative temples. When I got married, Gail's family was conservative, so I sort of fit right in.
Was that an attractive, there's a saying that when you marry someone, you marry their family. Was that a selling point to you, that Uncle Sherwin, Aunt Toby were Orthodox, that Grandma Ida kept a kosher home? Was that a selling point to you in the sense that, ooh, that's something I like?
No, I don't think it was a selling point. I think I just fit in. I fit in, and I thought, hey, it's how I believe now, and made me feel comfortable doing that.
I believe you were the vice president of the Ways and Means Committee at Beth Shalom. Is that correct?
I was vice president for 2 years. I was secretary for 2 years. I was on the board for 10 years.
What is your proudest accomplishment at the temple?
Seeing both my kids bar and bat mitzvah there. And then the enjoyment on the high holidays, because I would go very early in the morning. I'd go for a start, and then you and Lisa, and eventually your mother would come and sit with me. That I felt, that was important to me.
Well, I was there at 9 o'clock in the morning with you. I don't remember if Lisa was, but I was there all day.
On Yom Kippur.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Rosh Hashanah as well. Every Friday night service, I was there as well, along with Tuesday, Thursday classes and classes on Saturday. I might as well ask you, as this is being documented, do you have any regrets that you didn't allow me to play Little League Baseball because of Temple?
No. But I did fight for you to play football at what, 4'5"
Yeah.
and 80 pounds or
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah.
I did fight for you to play football that your mother
Right.
didn't want any part of.
Right. So, you and Mom eventually got divorced. How difficult was that on you? Obviously, when you get a divorce, you know, you almost feel a sense of relief. But did you feel you found yourself again after the divorce?
I felt, because of what happened in the past, and I've told you this before, I go back to a movie called Shawshank Redemption, and I remember a scene when Tim Robbins said, it's get about living or get about dying. And that's how I looked at the divorce. Okay, I'm 55 years old. When I was 50, I said, my life is half over because I plan to live to 100. But I figured, you know something? I've got to start doing something, enjoy myself, living. I was still working for the family business. My brother-in-law, because my father-in-law had passed long before that. My brother-in-law, when he found out, said, hey, your marriage has nothing to do with the business. Now, it also was because I was running a very large profitable contract business that he didn't want to lose if I left at that time. But they didn't, so I was still part of the business. I just had to learn to build a new life for myself. Because I moved from Northbrook into the city. All of the past friends that I had were all in the suburbs. They weren't coming into the city, and I had to learn a new life and find new friends and new people. And that basically is not me. I'm not extroverted. I'm an introvert.
So how difficult was that for you?
It wasn't easy. I forced myself to do it. I joined a couple things. I mean, they had bridge lessons at the East Bank Club, which I'd been a member of since 1980. I needed bridge lessons like a hole in the head because I knew the game backwards. But I got to meet people, and people introduced me to other people. And working out there, I met a guy who we used to spin together 6 days a week. And we started talking, and he and his wife, who were not Jewish, and these were the first really non-Jewish friends I had, sort of took me into their group of friends, and that's how my friends started expanding there.
You mentioned spinning a lot. When I was growing up, I never saw you on a bicycle, ever, not one time. How did you eventually get to a point where not only you jumped on a bicycle, but then you started riding 100-mile clips?
It was probably after you went away to school. I started riding, just riding in the area. I had a couple friends that I rode, but just to get just around the area. When I moved into the city, great places to ride along the lake, but I remember I was driving home from the East Bank Club one Saturday morning, and I saw a bunch of riders, maybe 300 or 400 coming down Michigan Avenue. And I said, God, what are they doing? Next morning in the club, I was in the locker room, and some guys were talking about it, and I asked them about it, and they said, oh, we're doing the AIDS ride, or we just finished doing the AIDS ride from Minneapolis to Chicago. It's a 500-mile ride from Indianapolis to Chicago. And I said, how do I get involved in it? And one of the guys, name was Bob Audette, became a very good friend of mine, said, do you bike? And I said, yes. He says, fine, meet me here, and you'll start training. Well, I got very much involved in that. Then I got involved in another bike club that I did ragbri with. So I started doing a lot of biking. I was in a lot better shape then than I am now. But
what's ragbri?
Ragbri is a week-long ride across the state of Iowa. You start on the west coast, the west side, on the either the Nebraska or Dakota's border, and you ride from the Missouri to the Mississippi.
How many times have you done that, roughly?
I've done 19 of them.
Is it more about the challenge of being able to do it, or is it more about the camaraderie of being with people that you know and friends?
At first, I thought it was 70-30 challenge. As it went on, and I got very involved in the bike group, it became 70-30 the other way, riding with friends. For years, there were 4 of us that rode together the whole ride. And I have some very good friends still from biking.
Granted, I am the one doing the interview here, so you do not have to humor me with your answer. You have 2 children who picked careers that aren't traditional. With that, both of us moved out of Chicago, and basically we never came back. Lisa graduated from college, went right to Minneapolis. I started moving all over the country with my career. I did come back to Chicago for roughly 4 years. As a father, and give me your honest answer, not because I'm sitting here, was it difficult for you not having your children in town?
I never thought of it like that. I always said, because growing up Jewish, when I did, you or not, or your children would either be a doctor, a lawyer, or an accountant. And I think it was doctor first, lawyer second, and the joke was if you had half a brain, you became an accountant. I've got 2 kids that are doing things that are completely unbelievable to Jewish parents that they're doing. I've got one who's a sportscaster and one who's a politician. And they're self-made, and I couldn't be any prouder of them, and I didn't care, Sure, would I like them back occasionally? Sometimes they came back and I wasn't sure happy I wanted them back at that time. But anyway, no, I was very proud of them going off and doing their own things, not taking the route that everybody thought you should do.
So, after you got divorced, you wound up at the East Bank Club. You were playing bridge, you were hanging out at the bar, which I'm guessing was quite the pickup bar.
Oh, well, when it started in 1980, it was the biggest pickup bar in the city.
Okay, with that...
That I never attended, by the way.
Okay, sure you did. With that...
No, not when I was married.
Well, not when you... Well, of course not when you were married, but... You know, I'm not going to ask you those questions. Did you meet Sherry at that bar, or where did you meet her?
I met her, no, I did not meet her there. Although she was a member of the East Bank Club.
Mm-hmm.
I did not know it at the time. The day before I got divorced, I was in the bar with a friend of mine, and it was one of the Bulls playoff games. And we're standing there, and a woman, I mean, she had to be about 5 feet, walked in between us. We started talking. She became a very good friend of mine as a friend. I never wanted to date her. She wasn't the type I was looking for anyway. But we had a nice talk. So the next day, I got divorced, went back to the East Bank Club because I had nothing better to do, went out and sat on the deck. She happened to come up because I did not tell her what was happening when I met her Thursday night. We started talking, we became friends. She invited me to some parties to meet some people, but then now the following 4th of July, and in Chicago, 4th of July is celebrated on the 3rd of July. That's when the fireworks. She said, why don't we take our bikes and ride down, because I live close to her. Why don't we take our bikes and ride down to Grant Park? I know some people from a ski club I'm a member of, and they're having a get-together. Why don't we go say hello? We did. That's where I first met Sherry.
And how did the relationship evolve in which she foolishly said yes?
Well, we don't have enough time for this.
Oh, we got plenty of time.
First of all, it took me about 3 months to call her up and ask her for a date.
Why?
She just looked fantastic to me. I couldn't figure out why someone who looked as beautiful as she did would want to hang out with me. But that's neither here nor there. So we went out, we started dating, and then I told her that I wanted to learn. She told me she was a skier. I told her I wanted to cross-country ski. And she asked why. I said, because I understand it's great cross-training for biking. I was big into biking. During the winter, I wanted to cross-train for that. And she said, okay, I understand what you're saying, but knowing your personality, it's not cross-country skiing. It's downhill skiing, doing this as fast as you can and not trying to kill yourself. And that was probably true. So we went up to Minnesota for a long weekend. I learned how to ski. I think I came back more black and blue than ever I had before. And she said, okay, now that we've skied the crappy stuff, you go with the ski club. A couple months later, we're going to Colorado to ski. That's where I first really learned to ski out here. But that only lasted about 3 or 4 months. We broke up. The main reason, as she said, we broke up was I was 7 years older than she was. And I was 56, she was 49, and she looked like she was 39. And she always dated younger people. Okay, we broke up. It was hard for me because I really liked her. We got back together again, maybe.
Why? Why did she get back together with you? Because the age difference certainly never changed.
I don't remember how we got back together the second time. It could have been on a ski trip because I had now gotten involved in the ski club. At least I was a member, so I was going on. I don't remember how we got back together the second time. But we got back together, broke up again basically for the same thing.
Same reason.
Right, but all during this time, she had a friend named Sue, and the three of us would get together for our birthdays. and we would always go to La Colonial, which was a Thai restaurant that overlooked Rush Street across from Hugo's and Gibson's. And we'd sit on the balcony, and it was like sitting in New Orleans overlooking Bourbon Street. Well, I don't remember whose birthday was, but it was like in February. We went there, three of us, as we always did. Then we went back up to a bar on State and Division that we had gone to before. And it's funny because now I live 5 minutes from that bar walking. Sherry and I lived there. And we were having a good time, and okay, not to brag, whatever they drank, I could drink 5 times more and still be sober. So we left. Neither of them were fit. I said, I'll drive you back to Susan's. No, I was fine.
No, you weren't.
Yes, I was.
You might listen.
Well, when you hear the rest of the story,
if you could drink 5 times as much, and you just admitted that you were drinking, you just admitted that you were drinking and driving.
Of course.
Well,
Of course, Eric.
No, this is documented now.
Eric, this is Chicago.
Okay.
Back then it was $50 behind the license instead of $20 when I moved there.
You're quite a role model to your great-grandchildren you may or may not ever meet.
Right.
But go ahead.
It's the fact of life.
Great-grandpa drove wasted.
Wait a minute. It gets worse.
Sure.
So anyway, I drive them back to Susan's. And I said, Sherry, you cannot drive home. There's no way. I'll drive you home. I drove her home. We get there. She said, will you stay with me tonight? Fine. Didn't have sex. Didn't need to. Got up the next morning. I said, okay, we've got to go down and get your car. Drive her back down. As I get there, she says, will you come back to the house? I said, fine, I'll come back to the house. Come back to the house. We sit down, start talking. And she basically said she has made some decisions in her life. She wants to really make this work. Can we get back together again? I said, we can do it on one condition. We tell nobody. That means my daughter doesn't know, my son doesn't know, your kids don't know, none of our friends know. I didn't want the kickback that I got after the second time we went back together.
Did you trust her that you weren't going to be Charlie Brown with the football again?
Right.
Did you trust her? And in that moment, that the football was not going to be pulled again when you tried to kick it. Did you trust her?
Yeah, because what she said was, I realized, first she said, I really like you. I really love you. And I need stability in my life. I can't handle this anymore. I need someone who I can trust, who I love, who I want to be with. So the first time you or anybody else found out was when I moved in with her 3 months later. Then we told everybody. And that's how we met till 2019.
So, when you were dating after the conversation, and then you got married, was that the first time you were truly happy in your life?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely it was. And one of the things that really showed in 2000, let's see, we moved in together in 99. We bought a house in 2000. We bought a 4-bedroom, 3-bath house for 2 of us. Why? Because Sherry said, your kids live out of town, they're going to come and visit. My son and his kids live out of town, they're going to come and visit. Your parents live in Florida, they'll come and visit, my mother will come and visit. So we bought this house, and we bought it in 2005. We bought it in 2000. I had moved into her townhouse. We bought it in 2000. In 2005, I was on Ragbri. I get a call from her that my father had passed away. I said, I got it. She said, I got to figure out how to get home. And she said, can you get to the Des Moines airport? And I checked, yes, I can get to the Des Moines airport. What time? I can probably be there by 4 or 5 in the afternoon. She said, fine, just get there. I'll tell you what flight you're on to get you home. I get home, she picks me up at the airport. I said, what? She said, we're flying out tomorrow with this, this, and this. But the best thing was we got down to my sister's in Chautauqua, my sister was, where they lived during the summer. She walked in and basically, and not, I don't know how the word is, she took over like you expect a daughter-in-law to do. And my sister mentions this to me. We were talking about it when I was there this last holidays for her birthday. The Cherry just took over, not ordering anybody, but just making sure everything was moving. That to me showed me how important that family was. And then of course in 2005 we figured out we didn't need this 4-bedroom, 3-bath house because nobody ever came to visit. So we sold it, we bought a 2-flat because we wanted rental income, and we lived there till we moved downtown in 2015.
One of the hardest things to lose about someone you love is something that Nancy Reagan talked about when she lost her husband, Ronald Reagan. And she was asked the question, what do you miss most about your husband? And her answer was, I have no one to share our memories with anymore. How visceral is that to you right now?
I think about it all the time. We could fight, and we did.
You know what we called you, didn't you? Don't you? We had a nickname for the two of you. Lisa and me and David had a nickname for the two of you.
What?
You don't know what it is?
No.
The Bickersons. We called you the Bickersons, but here's the difference. With Mom, you would just take it and never fight back. And while watching the two of you go at it was incredibly uncomfortable, it was beyond uncomfortable. I was at least thrilled you were fighting back. Not because I was hoping you'd get a good one in on Sherry, but I love the fact that you stood up for yourself, something that you didn't do with Mom. And there was a part of me, I hated seeing because it was uncomfortable, but I felt proud of you. Oh my God, Dad is sticking up for himself. Like, this is great.
Yeah, but the one thing that you guys never saw.
And we wouldn't see with what you're about to say.
No, because you couldn't. We never went to bed at night without kissing goodnight and said we love each other. Regardless of what the fights would be, that we always went to bed wanting to be with each other, which was very important to me. And then the funny things that you never saw, when I went to work for Sherry, when she got cancer and I went to work for her, she made everybody know that she was the boss. And when we would have meetings, team meetings, because we had somebody working for us and Jenna, our admin, and we'd sit there, and you have to understand, she worked for 20 years by herself, was national sales manager for a large company. I ran a contract division myself. We each had our own way of doing business, and it's hard to give that up. But the funny part, we'd go have these meetings, we'd go on, and she and I would start bickering, and finally she said, okay, just remember who the boss is. And that would end it right there. But no, we always, even though we fought, we always loved each other, and otherwise you don't let it out, you hold it in. And that was the problem I had in my first marriage, holding things in. I never held anything in with her, and she never held anything in with me.
What does family mean to you now at the age of 83?
I miss the most important person in my life. I know I have kids who care about me. I know I have a stepson who cares about me. But it's not the same if you don't have that person there.
But those that are here, David and Katie, have taken on a role that I can't take on because I don't live in Chicago.
No,
David and Katie have taken on a role that Lisa can't fill the void for because she doesn't live in Chicago. Your relationship with them, how has that grown over the years with Sherry and without Sherry?
That's really hard to say because they're there. I know if I need them. I try not to interfere. I see some things that I don't like, but I'm not going to say anything. They have to raise their kids the way they do. Emmett's coming out more and more. He's just turned 9 years old. But when I go there, I spend a lot of time with them. And we have a good time. But it's nice to have family. But you know, it's the same thing when they say about Shiva. Everybody comes to Shiva, and you have it for a week. Then who's going to come on the 8th day? Who's going to come? Now, luckily, I have some very good friends in the temple that I'm very involved with that sort of take care of that for me.
Your relationship with Lisa, you spend time up there. She comes in a lot. I don't come in as much. How is because now I have a family, it's harder for me to get in. Lisa is single. It's not a knock, it's just easier for her to travel. How has your relationship with her grown over the years?
I think I've seen her mature, become very independent, sometimes to her disadvantage. I try not to interfere with anybody. You know, I want family is important to be together. And whatever is going on, I don't want to get in the middle of if I can avoid it. You know, the old saying, peace at all costs. It's fine for me to say it. It's hard for other people to say it. But that's...
So I asked about Lisa. I'm not going to be self-indulgent at all to ask you about me. That will have to be a story for someone else down the road. I want to end it with this. For those that are watching this video, in 10 years, 20 years, 50 years, long after you are gone, with all due respect, I don't think you're going to live another 50 years. I don't think you're getting to 143, with all due respect.
Can I get to 142?
You can.
Okay.
Which would be, I think would be appropriate, because you were born in 1942.
Right.
How do you want to be remembered?
I want to be remembered as a person who tried to do the best he can, did not hold grudges, tried to help, did not expect anything back when I do something. When I do something for somebody, as far as I'm concerned, it's a one-way street because I'm offering to do it. I don't expect anything in return. I'm not transactional. I just want to do whatever I can. Someone wants to do something back, that's fine. But I want to do what I feel I can do to help somebody.
So, you have a few grandchildren, right?
Right.
You have Mia, and then you have Emmett. What is your message to your great-grandchildren as they watch this as teenagers and adults? Because that is your legacy. I am here because of you. So is Lisa, so is Mia. And because of your love for Sherry, even though it's not biological, you are an extension of Sherry through David and Katie and Emmett, and then Emmett will have his own children. What is your message to them?
Try to understand other people. Be kind, don't be vindictive. Life is too short. Do the very best you can. And be open to what you hear. You may not like it, you may not understand it, but try to be yourself and just take everything in as it's a comforting feeling that you have people around you.
Well, I have been sitting behind this camera the entire time. I'm going to get in front of it to say I love you very much and thank you for doing this. I love you very much. David Goodman, 83.